Okay, so these are the 4 problems for notes, and this is the only slide today. So you could copy these 4 problems down, and if you did print out the notes, this last problem is different. So you'll need to rewrite that one. So I'll wait till everybody's got all 4 problems written down. Okay, so before we start, a little bit of review of what absolute value does. If we have the absolute value of -8, that turns into 8. What about the absolute value of +8? Still 8. So what does absolute value do? Makes things positive. Okay, so we have 2 options of what could be inside these absolute values here, and we still get the same answer. So we have to check both cases on all of these. So whenever you see an absolute value, you know you're going to have more than one answer. Okay, so here's how we do this. Anytime you see an absolute value and the absolute value is all by itself, number on the other side, we're going to do 2 equations. I'll show you what to do. You're going to write the first one exactly like you see it. So x plus 8 equals 12. The other one we have to check is -12. So x plus 8 equals -12. And I'll show you why at the very end. So all you're going to do is solve these like normal. So what are we going to do to both sides? So this one we get 4, and this one we get -20. Now the reason we get 2 answers is because of what we talked about up here, and we're going to show that. So if we have the absolute value, and if we put this 4 in for x, we get the absolute value of 12, which is 12, which is what we wanted. But the -20 also works. And this whole checking process, you don't need to do in the homework. I'm just showing you why you get 2 answers. If you put -20 in, you get a -12. But since we're taking the absolute value of it, we still get our answer of 12 that we want. So you're always going to have 2 solutions whenever you have an absolute value. So this is as far as you need to go, right here. X equals 4 and x equals -20. So that's all the further we're going to go on the next 3 problems. This was just showing you why there's 2 answers, because both of them work. Both of them give us 12 for an answer. All right, now before we write it 2 times, we have to get the absolute value alone. So on the next one over to the right, what should we do first before we write it twice? Yes? Not +3. Subtract the 8. Because we need the absolute value completely alone on the left side. So we want to move this 8. So at this point, it looks a little bit more like what we started with over here, where it's absolute value alone, and then a number on the other side. Now tell me what issue you may see with this problem at this point. That's not the issue. There's a different issue. You can have a -3 inside the absolute value. What's wrong with the -5? Okay. I agree with you, yep.
The other side is going to have to be positive, so it can't equal that.
Correct. Look up here. No matter what, your answer is positive, right? So whenever you have an absolute value, it can never equal a negative number. because the whole reason that you have an absolute value there is to get rid of all the negatives. So whenever you see an absolute value, it cannot equal a negative answer. So whenever you see this, and you'll see it a couple of times in your homework, we just write no solution. A couple of people last hour had the question, well, how come we write a negative here then if we're doing absolute value? That doesn't make any sense. This right here doesn't have an absolute value on it. The original up here does, but when we write it 2 times, we're not using absolute value for those. So just be careful of that. Whenever you see an absolute value equaling a negative number, you know it's no solution. Questions before we move on? All right. Looking at the next one, again, we need the absolute value completely by itself. So what should we move first? Just like a normal problem. Yes, let's add the 5. So this just changes to a 9. Yes. Yes, right now these are being multiplied because there's no symbol. So to undo that, we would divide by 3. So what's left is the absolute value, which is what we're looking for. So now it's just like the first problem that we did. So once your absolute value is completely alone, you can write it 2 times. So the first time you write it, it's exactly like you see it, but without the absolute value. And then the next time, what do we make negative? The 3 at the end. Yep. 2x minus 3. The stuff inside the absolute value never changes. That always stays the same. And then we're just going to solve for x on both of these. So you get 3 and 0. First step is to always get absolute value alone. So if we're looking at this last problem, what's the first thing we have to do? Because of that negative 5 on the outside. Divide by negative 5. So at first you may think, oh, this is going to be a negative answer over here, but because we're dividing by the negative 5, negative 60 divided by negative 5, we get positive 12. So this one will work. We have our absolute value alone, so we can write it 2 times and get our 2 answers. Did I make any mistakes? We're good? We agree? Questions on anything? Yes?
You have to check it at the bottom of it.
Nope, you don't need to do this part on any of the problems. You do not. You can just stop at your 2 answers. Other questions?